Welcome back, people, to Aurora IAS lecture series on ethics, integrity, aptitude, the Unit 1 Ethics and Human Interface portion on ethics in public and private relationships we'll be dealing in this session. So the table of form will be as a crux or the synoptic of what's the difference between a private relationships and a public relationships. On one side you have private, on other side public, right? Private is inherited without choice. You don't have choice with your parents. You cannot exchange with others, or your best friends you cannot have an exchange. So that is where it is you're inherited or without choice. Otherwise the public relationships are inherited. You at the workplace, you try to create an environment of your people who have the ideology of your choice in an environment. That is where public relationships will happen. So the private on one hand has intimate love and affection is expected, whereas in public formal respect and accountability. But the disputes and imperfections are permanent with the private relationships, while in public, because the changing environment is gradually enhancing, thus you can always have a change or temporary nature of public relationships. If you are not satisfied with the job, you leave it and progress to another level, right? So the next thing is that private relationships are confined to a very small number among your cousins, parents, or very inner circle. Internal locus of control would be there, whereas public is of large number, where external control like your project head, your head of the department, like your boss, will always control it. The people surrounding you will share your value system, because you and your cousin like traveling, so you will form a group of your like-mindedness and then go for a holiday trip. That is where a private relationships happen. In public relationships, although you have an ego clash with your boss, but since he has invited you for his birthday party, you ought to go there. You don't have another choice. So the duties of a private relationships are voluntary and informal, while on the public hand it is imposed, compulsory, as well as a formal in nature. This is a crux of what's the difference between a private and a public relationships. There are 4 models of public relationships, where first one is the press agent or publicity. It's a one-way communication, just like this media addresses. It is just giving you out the information. Under persuasion, half-truths and manipulation influences the audiences. That is one kind of a public relationship. Second kind of a relationship is the public information model, where it's also a one-way communication, like the press releases or the organizational information. It is given and it does not form any kind of a formal research based on any of the facts or truths given into it. The third form of the model in which the public relationship is designed to is a two-way asymmetrical model, which is referred to as scientific persuasion, where you give your audiences the scientific proof of where the truth is coming out from. It conducts a formal research and then takes the audience feedback. The fourth and the final one is a two-way symmetrical model, which uses the communication to negotiate. It's a symmetrical. Both ways you take the feedback and assess the formal research, and then an open and honest communication is established. So those are the 4 models of public relationships where you can quote it, although it's not in your syllabus, but it can enhance your answer with a small 10 or 20 word write-up or a diagram mentioning these 4 models. Then the public relationships are nothing but you spread the information between your individuals or the organizations and the public. You inform the public, who are the customers, investors, partners, employees, stakeholders in the organization, leadership, products, and political decisions. This is public relation all about. You have designed a communications campaign, writing the news releases, then having a company spokespeople, social media content, or the Facebook pages or Twitter and Instagram pages. All a company or an organization or individual maintains to have a good public relationships. So the vital function is nothing but to have the management of decisions and influence the public opinion, based on which your brand image or the value of the organization, as well as a better harmony in the society, is achieved through your organizational relationships with the individuals as well as the society at large. Why do we need the public relationships? Because the changing telecommunication and transport has vastly increased. There are traditional closed societies now globalized, societies. Then we have right to expression and freedom forming the basic tenets of today's information growth. And we have some practice of staying in power for developmental tasks. The government also needs good kind of public relationships. The growth in businesses, amalgamations and subsidiaries across the national boundaries because of the globalization phenomena. That is why public relations are very essential. Now, what kind of ethics are you expecting in the public relationships? We are having a long-term responsibility to persuade and achieve the mutual kind of an understanding. You secure the willing acceptance of the attitudes and ideas. The policy that can be ethical means as a truthful nature based on trust. That is where your public international relationships of Indian government is also based on. Then ends can never justify the use of false or harmful or objectionable means. The means have to be trust, modesty, honesty, integrity and probity. So the Abraham Lincoln always said that you can fool some people all the time, but you cannot fool all the people all the time. It's because having a good public relationship will only enhance a kind of trust or the relationship ahead. It may have to deal with the pressure groups also. Good public relationships of an organization is very important to have a good rapport with your labor unions and customer protection groups as well as the environmental protection activities. That is why GM Crops has been gaining the resistance from the society, because these companies are not able to make the rapport with these farmers or the society in making them understand what are the negatives or the positives and how they will able to control the negative effects of this GM production. And then self-regulating ethical issues is very important in communicating the actual needs. So many of the issues, whatever legislation the government is coming up, the ethical aspects have to be addressed in a timely bound manner. So what are the kinds of the unethical acts in the public relationships? That you suppress the unfavorable news just because your media house is getting the funds to promote an ideology of a political party. If you don't get the information that is favoring your ideology, suppressing it's a very unethical act. You misinterpret the facts, you postpone a cause for some other interest of your own self-interest. There is a conflict of your personal as a public interest. Then you promise your results that cannot be obtained, which is not feasible, and use undesirable methods to pressurize the editors to carry out some material that is only aligned to your interests. So these are different kinds of the public relations unethical acts. Then what kind of principle a public servant has to follow? He has to have the public trust. Resource management is a very crucial important thing for a public servant. Code of ethics on conduct. In no benefit to family and friends. You have to have no financial obligation. You need to know your ethical principles right. You need to have the core belief system of compassion and tolerance, objectivity, integrity. That will come under the Nolan Committee. So before that, let's finish up the 4-5 points regarding the ethical principles that needs to be followed by the public servant. No private interest, leadership principles, decision making has to be open, as well as confidentiality in issues that need not be given out in the public domain. The respect for the constitutional principles of fraternity, equality has to be core of your principles in the ethical dilemmas, in solving them through your ethical standards. And then there has to be an accountability to your duty and respect the law of the land and do everything which is under the law and legal obligations. So that is where public servant has to deliver it, and for that Nolan Committee has given 7 principles which we'll understand through this chart. The chart represents the 7 principles of public life given by Nolan Committee. He says that selflessness, you have to act solely on terms of the public interest, not the private interest. Integrity is avoid placing themselves under any obligation. You shouldn't be influenced by the political influences or the financial obligations, that if you grant this project to our company, we'll give you a quid pro quo method of functioning should not be there in a public servant. And then it's a objectivity. Objectivity is impartially, fairly only based on the merit. You have to go through your decisions. And then accountability, you are accountable to the people, you are accountable to the law of the land. You have to be open while taking the decisions in a transparent manner. with honesty and leadership, great leadership skills to exhibit the principles for a well ethical conduct of behavior. These are in all the ethics in public relationships. While when we come to the ethics in private relationships, there is not much of the content that goes into this subject, because this is something where your other portions in the syllabus will come into handy. Your attitude, emotional intelligence, whereas your even ethical morality, in family systems, societal and education institutions, everything play an important role in designing your private relationships. That is your internal locus of control, which is highly dynamic, and there is importance given to trust, the compassion, the kind of honest relationship you are having with your private entities. That is what determines the private relationships all in all. So the write-up for this will be totally generalized with summation of all the previous as well as the upcoming chapters. That is why this PDF wouldn't contain much information regarding the private relationships, and there is no necessity of mentioning it in a separate fodder also. The main basic importance should be given to public relationships, because the subject orientation is towards the ethics in the public relationships as well as ethics involved with the public servant. So that is all for this basic session. It's a brief session, yet an important, impactful and very important information related to the public relationships, because in any answer relating to the case studies or subject matter in ethics in public administration or property and governance, all these terminologies and all these words and sentences can be very well incorporated. So that is it. Hope you are enjoying the sessions. Keep sharing, subscribing to the channel, and please comment down below for what all videos you want us to make on for the subject matters, not just this or any other subjects relevant to your preparation that can help you in preparation. So stay blessed and happy learning, happy studying. Jai Hind.